Thank you for downloading this podcast by Digital Mindfulness. This is episode number 14. Hello, and welcome to the Digital Mindfulness Podcast, where each week we speak with experts who are at the cutting edge of exploring what it means to be human in the digital age, and how digitized society impacts upon our organizations and our lives. Today I'm speaking with Jack Cooper, director of the technology company Doppel. The product they've created and the area of research that they're involved in is absolutely fascinating. They've created a wearable device that works in tandem with the natural rhythms of your body to make you feel more naturally alert or relaxed. This burgeoning area of research, called empathic computing, has great potential to help professionals and people in their personal lives to naturally and deliberately achieve a state of focus or relaxation. I'll let Jack tell you more about it. Before we get going, I want to take a quick moment to tell you about our online conference taking place on the 3rd and 4th of March 2016. The conference brings together experts from a whole host of fields, from technology to psychology, philosophy and others, to share wisdom and actionable skills on ways that we can enhance our personal and professional lives in the digital age. Be sure to register now for $100 off the general admission price. Okay. So let's talk empathic computing with Jack Cooper from Doppel. Okay, so Jack, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about learning a little bit more about Doppel and what you guys do and everything like that. But before we start, I was wondering if you can just tell our audience a little bit more about yourself. How did you find yourself coming to working on this project and with this company?
So I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And was a filmmaker before I went into that world. And the way I came to find myself here was I met the rest of the team on a master's course called Innovation Design Engineering. It's at the Royal College of Art and Imperial College London. And the general idea of the course really is to get people from all different backgrounds together into the same place, and then see what they come up with innovations. And so Doppel was something that we worked on as a team while we were at university, and obviously decided to carry it on. So that's how I find myself here.
So how did you actually come up with the idea for Doppel itself? Because that's really unique, I think.
Well, thank you. We didn't really have an idea of creating a certain thing when we started out. We were doing research into psychophysiology, specifically design and technology research into this area. So it's an area of psychology that's about understanding how our minds understand our bodies. And this is an exciting area of research because it's thought that the way our minds understand our bodies is the root of our emotions. So this idea that you feel with your heart is not necessarily a wrong way to think about it. So a classic example is you hear a loud noise and you become scared and your heart starts to pound. Or is it that you hear a loud noise, your heart starts to pound, and then you become scared because you react to your heart? And really it's a feedback loop. So there's lots and lots of ways in which we understand the world through our senses, and we react to those in all sorts of ways, and then we understand our own bodies, and it's actually a very complicated system. But that's where we started researching, and it's where we came upon the effects that we're utilising with Doppel, and start to see how we could use technology in that system, basically.
So exactly what is Doppel? What does it actually do, and for people that don't know?
So Doppel is a wearable device. It's a band that sits on your wrist, and the active part sits on the inside of your wrist. And what it does, quite simply, is it provides a tactile beat that you feel, like a pulse, and it feels like a heartbeat. And that heartbeat sits on the inside of your wrist, where we are in London. And that beat, that pulse happens on the inside of your wrist, where you expect to feel your own pulse. And what we achieve is an effect very similar to music. So an upbeat song will get you going, and a downbeat song will calm you down. And we create the same effect, but with no noise. So it's a beat that you feel instead of hear. And this means you can use it anywhere, and it's entirely in your control. So if you're nervous about talking in front of someone, you can have something that calms you down. If you're tired in the afternoon lull, you can have something that keeps you going. If you're wanting to wind down to go to sleep or wake up in the morning, it's like having the ability to put on any type of music you want, anytime, but with no distraction and without cutting you off from other people.
This is absolutely fascinating, because normally if people wanted to, we were talking just before this about changing their state. Normally we would take, say, stimulants if we wanted to raise our energy, or like caffeine or something like that, or we would take a downer if we wanted to relax, like, say, drinking a glass of wine or something like that. But you're saying that what Doppel does, it kind of has that effect. It can change your state by mimicking your heartbeat.
So yes, it's a different effect to those. So those drugs are doing something different to your brain. They're actually blocking receptors in terms of caffeine and things like that. The effect is much more like music. That's the closest parallel. So it's much more like you've put on, drum and bass, and that's got you going, rather than you've had a cup of coffee. And they are very different effects. People understand that there's a very different feeling associated with both of those things. Obviously, sometimes you want that crazy, kind of dizzy upswing of a triple shot of espresso, but that has its downsides in terms of the crash you're going to get later, or perhaps not sleeping.
Okay. So you've just raised some startup finance from Kickstarter, and I understand it was all successful, so congratulations. But how was the whole campaign? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
The campaign was intense. We probably made a lot of naive mistakes in our approach, but it was successful. It was very, very exciting and unbelievably gratifying. There's been so much excitement and so much support, and we are already indebted to our Kickstarter backers for helping us to reach our target, and we're hopeful that they're going to give us lots of feedback and help us actually shape this technology. It's still very early stage. It's a very exciting area, and we want it to be for people and to help people, and so we want the feedback of these early adopters that have believed in us. So it's very, very exciting. It's not an experience that I'd recommend for people's health. It's a lot of work, but it's already been worth it, and I think it's going to be amazing for us to have done.
I know obviously that there are some constraints that you have, but in addition to people on the ground showing interest in this, has there been any other kind of like corporate or institutional interest in this? Because to me, this is absolutely fascinating and has loads and loads of other applications.
Yes, there has. We've had interest from all sorts of places. Specifically through the campaign, we've had individuals from various medical backgrounds interested in the potential applications. We are going to be running a trial with Disney, which will be very exciting. That was actually one before the campaign, though, that particular trial. And yes, I mean, the interest has been across the board, from individual people wanting it for their own use, for people recommending it to friends and saying they're getting it for other people, through to experts or business people who see new market opportunities or whole areas that we could move into.
So Jack, it very much seems to me that what you're creating here, what you're developing here, is they're empathic machines, and you've used that word on your website to describe these machines, but could you just describe for the audience what that means exactly?
Yes, so we describe it as empathic technology, and we see there as being a few ways of achieving technology that is empathic, whether it's empathic by design, which is what we are doing. I mean, they're all empathic by design because, you know, it's the intended purpose. But what we have done is we moved from, we started with this psychophysiology research. It's about understanding people, understanding how they work, and then creating technology to work with how people work. And that's what it is. That's the core technology that's at play. So that's why it's empathic, because it's built on an understanding of people. Now, you also have the area of empathic computing, which is also fascinating, which is understanding, well, machines that understand people. So whether that's reading emotions or providing emotions back, there's robots with facial expressions, and basically how we can interact with machines on this very human level, and that's the area we're working in. And really, it's going to be a combination of the two always. It's designed fundamentally to work with people, and then if you have very intelligent computing that aims to understand people on a human level, that's the area we're talking about.
How then, if by working in, say, empathic computing, developing technologies that are empathic, how would that improve the computing experience for people with digital experiences?
Well, we think that the way it'll improve the experience for people is that if it's working with people, obviously it can be done in a way that works better with people. And what I mean by this is when technology is first created, it's quite rough and ready, and particularly something like computers work in a very rational way, and they're tools. And in order to use them, we have to become more like computers. We have to be very rational. But most of the time, we're not. We're irrational and creative and emotional, and we can create tools that work with us on that level more. And that will not only be a more pleasant experience for us, but also is much less stressful for us. It can help us in our emotional and creative needs as well, not just as a tool for our use. And this is happening across the board everywhere. If you look at design of these objects, if you look at an Apple Mac that has a pulsing light that's at about the rate of breathing, that's a very simple thing, but it actually helps us to connect with the object. People love their Macs, and that makes the experience better. It actually makes it a better tool. We use it better, and technology is going to move closer and closer to us. It surrounds us more and more and more, and it has to work with us. There's no reason for it not to. Why should we have to change, I guess?
I know we spoke about this again briefly in the pre-interview, but to be devil's advocate, there are some people that might think that if we have computing that can understand, that can work with us on an emotional level, that can understand how we feel and then respond to that or influence our behaviour, that could be used for negative purposes. What would you say to that?
I would say that it absolutely could be used for negative purposes, and it already is. It's also used for beneficial purposes. In the end, we are affected by what's going on around us all the time. There's whole areas of research around why we behave in certain ways, and if we can help people make beneficial decisions. It's called choice architecture. And it absolutely is the case that we can be persuaded to do things. We can have our behavior changed. Now, with all these things, in the end, it becomes a tool that can be used for good or for bad. A knife can be used to make delicious food or to stab someone, Technology is an enabler, and what it's used for is really a case for... It's really for the person that's using the technology to decide or to be regulated in how they use it.
So you mentioned very briefly that that technology like this, or in fact technology in general, is used to alter our behaviour in a negative way. Could you just give some examples of that? Because in a pre-interview, that was really fascinating.
So, I don't necessarily want to focus on the negative side of things because there are many, many, many positives. But a good example would be the infinite scroll on... negative is it's fun. But the infinite scroll on your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed or your Instagram creates an effect very similar to gambling. So you get random rewards. You never know when something interesting is going to come up, when something that will make you smile or will shock you is going to happen and give you this reaction. And because it's random, it plays on our reward mechanisms and what we like. That being said, it's not necessarily negative because it's fun, it's nice. We have a positive response from that. It's when you spend too long doing it, it's probably not a good thing. Another example of where there's a bit more conscious manipulation is obviously in retail and advertising. We all know that adverts try to manipulate us. It's persuasion, and what people may not realise is when it's happening to them actually in, say, a shop. So if you go into a store and it's a bit too hot and the music's a bit too loud and it's a bit too fast, you're essentially being rushed, and you're more likely just to make a purchasing decision and leave, which obviously is fantastic for the shop, but did you really want that top?
So, all right, so I'm not going to be devil's advocate anymore. I want to talk about the positive applications of this, because I think, just on my own, I think that could be many. But again, we were talking previously, or I was telling you previously, about how this could be used, say, for children to calm them down when they're feeling distressed, or say in financial services where, to kind of help traders, for example, make better decisions. But I don't know, from your perspective, where are some of the positive applications that you can see Doppel being used?
Well, obviously, I think there's myriad ways in which Doppel's going to have a positive effect. In a very general sense, people want to control how they feel. I say control, they want to be able to affect how they feel. So I gave the examples of if you're tired in the afternoon or if you're nervous about talking in front of people. So kind of in general life, you can use it and avoid some of maybe the negative sides of things like stimulants. But in more extreme user cases, you might have someone that suffers from anxiety, and can you help them to stay calm? Or somebody that we have amazing results using Doppel. When Doppel was tested independently by a psychologist for its ability to improve focus. So if somebody struggles with focus, maybe ADHD, or probably quite mild forms, but could it help people to remain focused, stay focused, reduce the drugs burden, that kind of aspect. There's plenty of careers where, or jobs where it's important to stay calm and focused. And in all these cases, being able to do it in a way that's very natural. It's just a natural response that we have to a stimulus. We're not, cutting out any of the steps. We're not sending an impulse into your brain. We're not, changing something chemically within you. It's very much this is how we respond to the world, and we're kind of, you could almost call it environment hacking, I suppose. We're just putting in a stimulus in place that you have control over. So for us, because you are the individual and you have control over it, and the only person it affects is you, really that can only be a positive thing because we're empowering people.
So on your website, one of the things that you spoke about in terms of the research that you've done was this thing called the Lightbox experiment. And I was just wondering if you can talk a bit about that, because that was fascinating when I read about that.
Okay, so this was a very early piece of research that we did, and what we were basically trying to find out was whether we could create kind of an emotional connection or a connection to an inanimate object. I did speak about the pulsing light on your Mac. That's not what we thought of when we did it, but somebody else made that connection later on. And what we did was we gave people 4 identical objects. It was a see-through playing card. And then through each one, we pulsed the light at varying different rates. We then asked the participant to select one. And we didn't give them any clues as to why. And people, if they asked for more clarification, like which one should I get, we just said, pick the one you want, pick your favourite. And people picked. And this was a very rough and ready experiment. It was not controlled. Obviously, we tried to put in structures in place to make sure that we didn't to skew the results at all. But what we found, and it didn't really matter on the environment, what we found was that people would select the one that was closest to their own heart rate. They were much more likely to do that. So people were perceiving these objects, and they were preferring the ones that in a very small way were most similar to them. And this is fascinating, obviously, because this is an inanimate object. And it was much more of it was very exploratory. I'm not sure we were looking specifically for, this can do this, it's going to solve this problem. But it was interesting because as it comes into this area of empathic technology, if, say, we want to have technology taking on more and more roles, maybe more and more human roles, say if there is a caregiving robot that's helping in a care home. I'm not for one moment suggesting that we want, old people to be in a care home where there's only robots and no people. But let's say they're doing some very menial tasks. If they're there and they feel human and nice, not in uncanny valley, they look a bit like a person, but they just feel more organic and human. That's going to create a much nicer environment. And if there are robots doing sort of menial tasks, then the nurses can concentrate on care and talking to people and that kind of thing. So there's perhaps a positive application of this. You could look at the negative side of things as well, in terms of getting people to choose a certain item is obviously going to be beneficial for some people. But it was a piece of research, and it was very interesting. I would love to see it done more rigorously, shall we say.
Okay, so Jack, unfortunately for me, we've come to the end of the interview, but I'm sure everybody's going to want to know this. Where can people find out more about your work, and when can people buy a Doppel?
Well, the best place is our website, which is, we are called Team Turquoise, and the website is tturquoise.com. That's turquoise with 2 T's at the beginning. Not the best domain name we know. And also, there's a lot of information on our Kickstarter page. So if you search for Doppel, Doppel, in Kickstarter, you'll find our Kickstarter page. We are going to be taking more pre-orders. At the moment, there's a sign-up on our website to be on the list, so you know when that becomes available.
Jack, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I've had a really great time, and thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much.
So there you go. Empathic computing and wearables that can learn the rhythms of our bodies to help us remain in an optimal state. This is amazing stuff, so be sure to order a Doppel when they become available. Don't forget to check out our online conference, which will be taking place on the 3rd and 4th of March 2016. You can see all of this at digitalmindfulness.net. Until next week, take care.